Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Shelby on Safari, the place where we talk animals, pop culture, and history into one. I am your host, Shelby, of Shelby on Safari, surprise. And I'm a wild animal biologist who loves all those things. And this is the first live stream of 2022. I am so excited. And to celebrate the first live stream of 2022, we're going to actually be taking a step back. Now, I'm very much a type of person who loves to look forward. In fact, my head's often in the clouds, or so I'm told. And not just because I'm really tall. I'm about 5'9", and there's a fly in my house. Oh, hello, Grace. Yes, hello. Oh, hello, Katie. Hey, Dom. Oh my gosh, the whole gang's here. Hey, everybody. That's a good shout. Actually, if you are watching live, do let me know in the comments. Say hi. It's always nice to meet new friends and see some familiar faces and friends as well. Happy New Year, everybody. And if you're watching on the replay like my buddy Jody does, also let me know because it's nice to see you. So hi, everybody. I had to show off my height. So Grace, my friend Grace, is a bit shorter than I am, but I'm not showing off my height. I just wanted to clarify that my head's not in the clouds, literally. It's more of a figurative expression. But alas, I need to create a button that says alas, because actually, all of you who are in the chat at the moment, y'all know the exciting news about alas, and if you don't, well, apparently that is my new phrase that I love to use. One might say a filler, but I'm really chuffed with it being alas instead of like. And it was brought attention. So what do I do when I get horrified? Well, I turn it into a joke. And so my beloved cat, Peter, who is probably the poshest cat, or at least he looks it on the surface, but underneath he is quite the baby. In fact, he squeaks. He doesn't, you would think with the big cat, who's quite the big male, you'd think, all right, he has a pretty powerful cry. Oh no, it's like a little meh, meh. Yeah, I'd get him in here now, but he's actually sleeping on top of the kitchen counter shelves at the moment, and I'll put a picture over on Instagram later. But anyways, I'm getting distracted. We're not even, 1 minute in, and I'm already gone. Well, tonight's video is all about conservation. So 2022, really looking forward to, the year ahead, but to look ahead into the world of conservation and animals and wildlife, I think it's often important for us to take a step back and look at where we've come from and to celebrate some of these successes and things that maybe could have gone a bit better to then make better decisions going forward in the future. And so tonight I'm going to be sharing with you 3 of my favorite stories of 2021. Now, when I say that, I like to think I'm a positive person, and some of my friends might say that as well. So some of them are going to be quite positive, but also I chose these specifically because that they aren't often talked about. And it's really sad because these animals are incredible, and I love a lot of animals, but animals specifically like pandas, hot take, pandas, and some other species often get a lot of the limelight. They're quite charismatic. But tonight, friends, I'm going to share with you 3 species that you may not have heard of, some you may have, but that have had incredible conservation successes, stories, developments happen in 2021, and that you should keep your eye on in this new year. So, you guys ready? I see a lot of things going on in the chat. Hello, all my friends. Hello, Emma. Hello, everybody. It's so nice to see you. So, let us get started, and I'm going to share, look at this, my friends, my snazzy new branding. Oh, I'm ever so posh. If you were here in the beginning, you saw I have a countdown and whatnot. That's thanks to my friends, Grace, Emma, who's in the chat as well. You guys have all been little guinea pigs over the past few days of it, as I've been saying, hip, hip. But there it is, friends. Here's where you can find me on all these social media platforms. Probably the one I'm most active on, apart from YouTube, is Instagram. So please follow me there if you're not already, because that's where I go behind the scenes on a lot of stuff and also pick your brains about what y'all want to see. So let us first go to the Griffon Vulture. Now, the Griffon Vulture, actually, I'm going to go back to my room. Actually, is, well, it should come as no surprise that I love vultures, right? I do a lot of vulture videos. This is a stunning, look at this. Isn't that stunning? Absolutely stunning drawing of a Griffon vulture. They're absolutely amazing animals, and you know I love history as well, so this is quite a nice ancient look. Don't just say, oh, thanks, Alice, nice sweater. Also, I got a cool new necklace. Look, it has a little whale tail on it. Anyways, I'm getting distracted. Here we go. All right, so the Griffon vulture, guys, is absolutely charismatic, and I'm holding breath because I accidentally removed it from my StreamYard. So here it is. Here is the Griffon vulture in flight. It is gorgeous, and you know with vultures, they get a bad reputation, right? People are like, ew, they're gross, they eat dead things, ew. But they're really important, and if you want to learn more, and if you haven't watched it already, I did a really detailed background on vultures and their importance in history and why they are so important nowadays and why we should actually care about these incredible ecosystem solid dudes, really, for lack of a better phrase. And so I'll pop that down in the link in the description below for you to check out later. I did it for Vulture Awareness Day, and spoilers, every year I'm going to be doing a Vulture Awareness Day video. Why? Because they're amazing. Anyway, so let's go on. So any chance I can throw in to talk about vultures, I'm gonna. So buckle up, friends, because we are going to Cyprus! Woohoo! So y'all know I love to travel. In fact, our friend Tiffany loves to travel. She goes to Greece and all these different places. Emma even used to do a podcast on traveling. We love to travel, and unfortunately, that's not quite happening at the moment. So tonight, in tonight's live stream, we are going to travel around the world and go to some pretty cool places while talking about animal conservation. What could be better? And you know, too. So buckle up, kids. Let's get Cyprus. Beautiful. If you've been to Cyprus, let me know in the chat. I'd be keen to see. And, oh my gosh, you guys make me chuckle. I don't know what I'm going to do with you guys. So yeah, we're going to Cyprus, friends. And per usual, throw in a bit of pop culture quiz. Well, not pop culture, pop quiz question for you guys in the chat. Y'all have been chatting, making me chuckle. Now's the time to type in what answer you think is the answer to this question. I'm coherent today. Today was my first day back at work, so you can kind of tell why I'm going off the rails. So what animal went extinct in Cyprus because of illegal poisoned baits? I know, really starting off on a positive note here, guys. So in the chat, do you guys think it was A, the Andean condor, B, the turkey vulture, or C, the Cineris vulture? All different types of vultures, but let me know in the comments which one you think went extinct in Cyprus because of poisoned illegal baits. So just to throw it out there, because sometimes it's important to look back, even back further than 2021, to then make better decisions going forward in the future. And also helps to hopefully let us recognize if we made some mistakes and how we can be better going forward. So it was not the Cyprus vulture, mister. It is actually the Cineris vulture. C. Fun word to say, but they're just quite absolutely gorgeous birds. In fact, I hope I have a picture of one. Do I? Probably not. Do I? Oh, no, I did. Yay! Yay, passed, Shelby. Well done. So there they are. Quite interesting compared to the Griffon vulture. A bit more hairy face. But again, that neck, because of how they eat the carrion, a bit cleared, help keep it nice and clean for them. But there they are. Quite stark contrast to the Griffon vulture. But anyways, let's go back to the Griffon vulture. So the Griffon vulture was once a common sight in Cyprus, probably similar to our friend the Cineris vulture, but now it is actually their most threatened bird of prey. So as recently as the 1950s, there are hundreds of birds in the beautiful island of Cyprus, but nowadays, actually specifically 2019 in fact, a census only showed 20 individuals remained. So from hundreds of birds in 60 years gone down to 20, that is quite a serious decline. And a la our friends, the Cineris vulture, the illegal kind of wildlife poisoning has played a part in the devastating effects on the Griffon vulture. So I guess that's why I wanted to bring up the Cineris vultures, because we haven't quite learned our lesson. But hopefully, fingers crossed, we will hopefully save the Griffon vulture from going extinct on Cyprus. And I'm going to go into a bit more detail of what's going on right now. That is so cool. And actually stuff that was done in 2021, obviously, because that's the point of tonight's live stream. So there's, apart from kind of the legal bait side of things, there's also the issue of food availability. Because what do vultures eat? Carrion, dead things, yay, which is part of their kind of importance in the ecological kind of system, the circle of life, if you will. There's the first Disney reference for the evening. And so it leads into the effect of, okay, there's these big issues, but how are we going to deal with it? And the biggest thing to deal with in conservation is often variety of different organizations working together. And that's why I wanted to highlight this conservation story in particular, is because the Vulture Conservation Foundation, a great foundation that does work for vultures all over the world. I'll pop a link to their foundation in the description down below. They also have a fantastic Instagram, which is very active and shows what they're doing. I encourage you to follow them if you're not already. But they actually got funding from the EU's LIFE program to not only address the threats like illegal, bait poisoning, but also to restock the population and raise awareness and work with, local stakeholders, local people, to get them to be invested in wanting to help the Griffon vulture as well. So they're going at it at a holistic approach with a variety of different organizations all coming together to help this one species. You can't do it on. Speaking of on your own, we're gonna take a look at vulture restaurants. Yeah, where is Rita? I'm wondering where Rita's at. Tell Rita I'd like to have Rita on here, please. Rita, your presence is requested. But friends, while we wait for Rita, another pop question for you, friends. What are vulture restaurants? Now, for many of you, I was actually going to make this an open-ended question, but then I thought of my friends who attend the chat, and no offense to my beloved fans and friends who join me, I thought it would be best to give you multiple choice questions, because I thought we could be here a while. So do you guys think vulture restaurants are A, places where poison-free carrion is placed so vultures may feed undisturbed and may feed on, poison-free things and survive, or B, and I can't take credit for this one comes from my husband, restaurants where you can carry on eating all day? Yeah. I hope, yeah. Thank you, Dom. Thank you, Dom, for picking B. Thank you. Yes. Do they serve roadkill? Hi, Crazy LV. Nice to see you. Oh my gosh. I was thinking of you the other day because we were watching Harry Potter. And behind the scenes, I love watching the behind the scenes, and they went into Luna and casting Luna. And I was like, oh my gosh, Crazy LV. And yeah, so that's why I thought of you. But hopefully you've watched that. I love watching the behind the scenes stuff, and I'm sure you've had your fair share of behind the scenes stuff, you lucky duck, when it comes to that wonderful franchise. I need to do a live stream on Harry Potter creatures. Here's looking at you, Studio 77. Anyways, roadkill. I'm not going to tell that story, guys. That might be for the 1,000 subscriber live stream, but not for this one, not roadkill. So vulture restaurants, and it is a term that is used in, the scientific community, which I love. I love that it's given this classy name, is a place where poison-free carcasses are made available to vultures. Because as we saw with the Cineris vulture, that's what led to their decline and to their eventual extinction on Cyprus, was poisoned food. And that has been a huge issue across the world, specifically in India with diclofenac, a kind of veterinary drug that's administered to cows to help with pain relief. But it may help the cows, but doesn't help the vultures who eat the cows when they die. So yes, vulture restaurants are super important when it comes to conservation of vulture species. So I thought it'd be fun to just mention that into your vocabulary, that it's not just a place where you can carry on eating all day. So Now, here's a beautiful picture of the beautiful, beautiful Griffon vulture, the ones that we're talking about, and specifically the efforts that are being done in Cyprus, especially kind of starting in 2021 and leading into the future. And with the Griffon vulture, as I said, there's only 20 individuals left. And that shouldn't come as a surprise that that's a pretty low number, seeing as they came from, 500, even more individuals. That's narrowed it down quite tiny. Even if the threats are tackled, that's still a low number. And so thus the organization, the EU's kind of Vulture Life program, is bringing in individuals from Spain, actually, to kind of restock the population, to prevent, to protect genetic integrity. There we go. There's a nice way of putting it. So they're not all inbred and things like that, and hopefully kind of help give a much needed boost to the population. Now, this is the exciting thing that happened last year that's well worth celebrating, is that in November 2021, the first individuals, about 15 in particular, which is a good number because that's my favorite number, were brought over to Cyprus, and they've started the kind of acclimatization process with the Griffon vultures to help maximize their chance of survival. So not only getting them obviously used to kind of the weather and the terrain and all of that, but getting them, equipped with GPS transmitters, because in conservation, it's not as simple as, okay, release, you're free, go, be free to the world. You gotta follow it up, and you gotta see, okay, how are they doing? Are they breeding? Are they going places? You can't just release them and say it, because you need to follow things through. And of course, it looks like I have gone down. Am I here? I love my internet sometimes. Sorry, guys. So the most important thing that you need to know, I don't know when it went out, but is that they are here. They're at Cyprus. They're getting acclimatized to Cyprus and being prepared kind of for release with the GPS transmitter. So, as I mentioned, the conservation side, especially with the Griffon vulture, is not just, okay, now we have a couple more individuals, we're going to tackle the threats. You got to deal with the people as well and get the people on the ground invested and, a part of the process. You can't just come in from the outside and take things over. And so this conservation fund, Vulture Conservation Fund, is really working hard with the local people to invest in them and really help them take pride in the Griffon vulture as well, with regards to kind of training them up for vulture rehabilitation, in case one gets injured. How do you deal with the sick vulture? Because it takes a lot of work and a lot of training just to be able to handle them correctly, but also being a part of maybe the less fun things of being part of the criminal investigation. If one does get poisoned, how do you investigate that to deal with that? And so there's so many different aspects of not just working with the animals, but the people as well. Are all vulture species vulnerable? That's a very good question, Crazy LB. I'm sure they're all close to it, if not vulnerable. I don't want to give an answer because I genuinely don't know, but I'm pretty sure most of them are, if not. But that's a wonderful segue to check out my video on vultures. Are they feared or revered? Which I'll put down in the link down below. Subtle. But no, because I do talk about it in then, but that was well over a year ago, and my memory span doesn't last that, because I'm pretty sure most are. Very good question, Crazy LB. Yes. Hello, Tiffany. We're in Cyprus at the moment. I know you're not there at the moment, but guys, Tiffany, girl in her passport, she would know all about this part of the world. But yeah, we're talking about the Griffon vulture as part of one of our animals top conservation stories of 2021. So we were just talking how important it is to get people involved, and with animal conservation, many different facets. A part of it, not just working with the animals, but the people too, getting them involved. So speaking of people and getting things involved, I really want to give a shout out actually to my friend Grace, who's actually in the chat. And I'm going to make myself a little bit bigger here for a second, because for Christmas, she sent me this from the wonderful Creature Candy folks. They do fantastic, beautiful pieces of work. In fact, actually on the back, it talks about the Wildcat. So I was actually quite chuffed to get this cup, and it is hosting my water, which I refuse to drink, even though I have it, only because it's kind of awkward drinking on live stream. But but yes, so I wanted to bring up the Wildcat because, well, we've gone to Cyprus, beautiful, warm country. I thought, why not come here to the UK and talk about the beautiful kind of, very, I just don't really know how to describe it. Almost like, I think the British tiger is the phrase that they use. It is a fantastic animal, and one that not too many people know about outside of the UK. And even in the UK, it doesn't get talked about often when we think of native species conservation. There are so many incredible animals here in the UK that, even local people might not think of exotic, but for myself, a Californian, I'm like, ooh, a magpie. And I get laughed at because they're just a common bird. But alas, oh gosh, there we go, round two. The Scottish wildcat is so cool, and they really need our help. And yes, there's been some impressive conservation successes this year, with beavers in the UK. But as that got a lot of press, I wanted to switch gears and talk about a lesser talked about animal, surprise, the Scottish wildcat. So, friends, actually, I should mention that I say the Scottish wildcat, but you'll see on the screen, you'll see on the screen, there's no screen for you to see. I see the screen, but now you see the screen. On the screen, you'll notice that I just put wildcat, not specifically Scottish wildcat. Because the Scottish wildcat and the European wildcat actually share the same scientific name. So they are the same species. However, because the Grand Britannia island separated about 1,000 years ago, that kind of put the Scottish wildcat species literally on an island. They've been separated for quite a long time, and so they're considered a subpopulation. So same species as the European wildcat, but very different subpopulations. So today we're going to be discussing the Scottish wildcat, which happens to be the rarest and most threatened mammal, which, here, kind of in the UK, but still pretty snazzy. So technically, they're not extinct in Scotland. They're critically endangered, which on the list, and one of these days, we'll actually do that on a live stream. I think that'd be really cool to go through with you guys the IUCN Red List and how animals are kind of categorized. And there's many different ways of doing it with regards to kind of conservation, but the IUCN Red List is kind of the most commonly used one. And so these guys are at the very kind of top or bottom, whichever way you want to look at it, with regards to where they stand. So critically endangered is the last kind of step below or above being extinct in the wild. So they're right there, right on the cusp, guys. And that's because, well, quite a few different reasons, but the main thing is that their wild population is non-viable. So that's essentially kind of a fancy way of saying that there are not enough wildcats. And with a lot of those wildcats being hybrids, mixing kind of with domestic cats, the remaining population of Scottish wildcats wouldn't be able to form a self-sustaining population on their own. And so that's, again, it's going back to the people. There's a lot of similar themes amongst these conservation stories. But the biggest thing with this one is obviously we have to pay attention, to the hybridization side of things. So this one, we're getting a bit more genetic on the genetic side of things, which of course probably plays a part with the, Griffon Vulture, and thus them bringing in individuals from Spain to help kind of mix up the genetics within those vultures there. But the IUCN report, actually the same one that kind of is like, dude, these guys are critically endangered. Actually, it's not the same one. The IUCN Cat Specialist Group did a really interesting report on the Scottish wildcats, and they were the one that said that wildcat releases are now essential for the recovery of the species. So with regards to wildcat releases, you guys are probably like, what? That's where we take matters into our own hands, because at this point, with them being a non-viable population, because we were the ones that screwed up, we should be held responsible for this. And so taking, using captive breeding to our advantage to help the Scottish wildcat recover is what is needed to ensure that the Scottish wildcat doesn't go extinct. That's kind of the bare minimum. And luckily, within that, we do, because of some incredible zoological collections here in the UK, we do have some kind of really genetically healthy, for lack of a better phrase, Scottish wildcats that are almost better than or are more purebred. Really don't like using that term, but you know what I mean? They're more Scottish wildcat than obviously hybrid with domestic cats because they've been in zoos. So these guys are perfect candidates for a captive breeding program, which we'll get to later. I'm getting so excited talking all this genetic-y stuff. But I think we should briefly mention how it got that bad with the Scottish wildcat. First things first, persecution and habitat loss. So, you know, they think, you know, farmers, classic farmers thing, like, oh, the Scottish wildcat is, you know, taking my sheep, taking my cattle. Well, they probably could take some chickens, but they're not that big where they would take bigger things. But primarily it's habitat loss with these guys in the Scottish Highlands. And so that's kind of the big thing. But the hybridization, as we'll see, and we'll go into a bit more detail with the study, that is one of the biggest threats affecting the Scottish wildcat. But it's being addressed, which is exciting. The chat's pretty quiet. Guys, mix it up. Actually, I know what we'll do to mix up the chat and get you all talking. Here's a picture of Scotland really quick. I forgot to show you guys because as we're going around the world, so we started in Cyprus with the Griffon Vulture. Now we're heading up to the far north of the British Isles in the Scottish Highlands. But look at that. Dudes, that looks stunning. Absolutely stunning. In fact, it almost looks like a filming location for Harry Potter. Hagrid's hut, I think. Glencoe, I think is where Hagrid's hut was. I did go and have a picture of the Scottish Highlands in a t-shirt, which is unbelievable. I was told to prepare for really cold weather, and there was a heat wave when I was up in Scotland. That was ironic. In fact, I actually went swimming in a river in a random little village in the Scottish Highlands. One of the most amazing memories of my life. But alas, friends, here we go. Oh, there we are on 3. I'm trying to keep track now. But Grace and friends in the chat, I wanted to get you guys chatting and let me know what you guys think the Duke of Sutherland's Gaelic title, and I'm going to apologize in advance because I'm going to butcher this, Morer Chat. Chatte. I'm going to say chatte because that sounds a lot more cooler, and I'm American and I can get away with it. Chatte. Yeah, instead of chat. I'm very nasally. What do you guys think the Duke of Sutherland's Gaelic title, Morar Chat, means? What do you think? Is it A, the great man of the cats, B, Catman, or C, man who fears cats? Let me know. And I will take a sip from my Wildcat glass, courtesy of Grace and Creature Candy. What do you think? The Duke of Sutherland's Gaelic title. By the way, this is up in the north, in the Scottish Highlands. So it is a direct reference to the Wildcat. Let me know. Katie. Hello, Katie. Did you see? I have my necklace on. I'm so excited. We got A. That is a fantastic. Thanks, Squanto. I appreciate it. I've been working on it. Don't get me. I can't say croissant. Croissant. I can't do it. I say croissant. And I pronounce the T. I try to be posh, but I can't. That's why I say alas, guys, is because that's my one way to feel posh. All right. So the Duke of Sutherland's title actually means the great man of the cats. And so I love reading a few interesting stories about the Scottish wildcat, and it's far too much to go into detail now. I know I often like to mix in pulp culture, history, and all of this into one, but tonight we're going to focus more on the conservation side. But I feel like I had to throw in a bit of this because I thought that was quite funny. Like, what a cool title that is, The Great Man of the Cats. But there's actually a folklore story of a fairy cat as well, and there's one cat that's from the other world as well. There's so many cool different stories, all kind of talking about this cat's elusiveness, but it's also ferocity too. And so it's definitely something for a future Shelby on Safari video, is to go more into the myth and lore of the Scottish wildcat. So I should say that back in March of 2021, because we're looking back before we can look ahead to the future, the first wildcat was brought to the Saving Wildcats Conservation, Breeding for Release Centre based at the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland's Highland Wildlife Park. Woo, say that sentence 10 times fast. So Saving Wildcats is this impressive organization that, again, like the Vulture Conservation Foundation, combines the hive mind, brain power of a variety of different people and organizations all coming together for a common goal. Specifically, with these guys, it's working to save the Scottish wildcats. And so they've teamed up with primarily RZSS, and they have a fantastic collection at the Highland Wildlife Park. I have not been, but it is on my list. I really want to go, primarily to check out their center. I'm assuming it's off public, so I may have to pull some strings. But this place sounds fantastic, specifically because it's off show. So the Wildcats, get to have a bit more privacy, if you will. But also we can really study and make sure that we're doing everything we can to help get these cats ready for release. And in fact, they have many different parts of the center. In fact, when they do have kittens, they have, a lot more land, and we'll be able to help get them ready to go and hopefully interacting, with people as less as possible. So they really have thought this one out, and it sounds like a brilliant center. And so let us now, I keep getting distracted. Look how beautiful this kitty is. And I say kitty, but I'm surrounded by cats in my house, but this cat is no cuddly Peter. Let me tell you, little machines. So I brought up a question, but I'm gonna go back to me really quick because I'm function. Where are we at? Oh dear, it's already 8:30. How did it get that late already? So I should mention the conservation aspect of what happened last year was really important in March when the very first kind of Scottish wildcat arrived. Her name was Nell, and she arrived from the Allendale Wilderness Reserve. And so she was kind of already in a reserve. But with Nell, it is hoped that any kittens that she rears will be among the first wildcats released into the Scottish Highlands next year. And Nell was just the first one. Over the past few months, from March leading up into this year, 15 further cats have arrived. They haven't quite updated where they are at with kind of breeding and things like that. And I guess they're probably getting the cats acclimatized as well, like our Griffon Vulture friends are in Cyprus at the moment, getting them kind of used to the surroundings before, they're going to get comfortable breeding. But speaking of breeding, why is that so important that cats are being brought into this specific kind of reserve for conservation breeding? Well, let's talk genetics. Very similar to our friends, kind of the Griffon vultures in terms of a viable kind of population. It does raise the question, how many cats will make a viable population? A population which, is quite rid of hybridization, a more pure kind of Scottish wildcat, enough to kind of keep the population going. And sadly, after kind of some work that's been done since 2014, based on a survey then, it was suggested that a population of 40 cats made up of 20 males and 20 females would stand a 95% chance of survival over 50 years. So it would take roughly 40 cats for this population of Scottish wildcats to be viable, be self-sustaining. And so therefore, the Saving Wildcats group wants to release 60 wild cats over a time period of 3 years, beginning this year. So that's why they got kind of the move on last year with bringing in some of the beautiful Scottish wildcats into this conservation breeding center from kind of different reserves and whatnot. And so that's a pretty big goal, of at least 40, but, hoping, for 60. That's quite a lot, but I think they can do it. And with that in mind, sometimes it's talked about, okay, why, with the breeding aspect, kind of why is that genetic integrity important? As I mentioned, kind of with domesticated cats hybridizing with these Scottish wildcats, it is really important for us to look at the current population of wild Scottish cats. And so in 2017, all breeding captive wildcats, so like ones in zoos, were genetically assessed for hybridizations, because if we are going to kind of breed these wildcats, we want to make sure we know what we're breeding and kind of what their genetic integrity is. Now, actually, no, I'll save that question for later. Of those captive breeding Scottish wildcats, only those that passed the minimum threshold were used for further breeding. So these scientists were very specific. Okay, here's our minimum threshold. If these Scottish wildcats don't pass this far, we don't want them to have any babies. They're too much hybridized, kind of thing. Harsh, but I know, but it's important. So they found 107 captive wildcats that were in the breeding program passed this test, this genetic kind of hybridization. Are they not? 107 passed. That's quite a significant amount of the captive wildcat population. Now, that was actually back in October 2019, so I wonder what it's changed now. Now, my question to you fine folks is, knowing 107 captive wildcats were passed the test, they got all A's on the genetic test, and they're now in the breeding program, how many in the last 5 years wild Scottish wildcats do you think passed the genetic threshold? Knowing what we know from at least what I've told you of how much hybridization has been a part of the Scottish wildcats and how they are a non-viable population, meaning we as humans, to protect them from going extinct in the wild, need to step in and participate in ex situ conservation. That would then turn to in situ conservation, but we'll get to that in a bit. Let me know in the comments, because you guys have been quiet. I always get nervous when you guys are quiet, when I'm talking through stuff and you guys aren't chatting. Makes me nervous. Makes me nervous. What do you think? Ooh, got a lot of C's. Yes. You guys have been doing Squanto. D wasn't an answer. Wasn't on there. You cheeky rascal. Oh, Emma thinks B, none. Oh, so sad. So sad. But alas, I'm pleased to say that the answer was in fact 2. So well done, Alice, Crazy LV. Well done, friends. Well done. It was in fact 2, which I don't know about you, is quite striking when we think of, okay, the wildcats that are in, captivity. So like in zoos, 107. That's quite a good amount. But then in the wild, the population that we're like, oh, they're wild, they're out there, they can do what they want. Well, they are doing what they want because they're hybridizing. So only 2 passed this requirement for them to be kind of, not hybridized. And that's why, essentially, guys, the decision was made, and the report said from the IUCN, these guys are non-viable. We need to intervene or else they are going to go extinct. But if we're going to look for a positive, at least we have this population in captivity, 107 individuals. That's really good that we can hopefully breed from at this center up in the Scottish Highlands at the Highland Wildlife Park to then release into the wild and hopefully get these cats back out and not back out because they're going to be born in captivity and then released. But you know what I mean, out in the wild, because they are absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous friends. Speaking of which, here's another picture. So, and I say, here's another picture, and I make myself bigger on the screen. You'd think this is my first live stream. Oh, but to be fair, I do love doing the live streams with you guys. Yeah, I'd be keen to hear Emma, Katie, and oh, look, Rita decided to join us. Hello, Rita. What do you guys think of the Scottish Wildcat? Have you heard of the Scottish Wildcat before? Or was it kind of like, yeah, we have some cats up in Scotland? But I'd be keen to hear kind of how you guys view it. Because obviously as an outsider coming in, I'm like, oh, Wildcat, look at my mug. Yeah. I don't know. What do you guys know? Because they are pretty fierce cats. I mean, they mostly hunt squirrels. No, squirrel. They eat small rodents like rabbits. I just wanted to say squirrels because I get teased of how I say squirrels. Squirrels is a whole other topic of conservation here in the UK. As you know, there's gray squirrels and red squirrels. In fact, I talk about it in my What Real Animal is Squavit video, the Pokemon. And yeah, one of my favorite videos too. In fact, I should have done more for my friend Choppa, because Choppa's in Australia and he doesn't have squirrels and he loves squirrels. But anyways, the Scottish Wildcat, they eat small rodents. So they're just quite fierce hunters, you know, to put up with the winters of the Scottish Highlands as well. These guys mean business and they are absolutely stunning, but they are not your domestic kitty, even though they sometimes mingle with them. They don't, yeah, they're definitely not a house cat, not one you would go up and pet and cuddle. Although Maui's not a house cat either. Maui's quite, I would say he thinks he's more of a human. He's a funny cat. Anyway, so friends, to wrap up tonight's live stream, I want to take you guys, we've been to Cyprus to see the beautiful Griffon vulture. We've, you know, went in the sun and experienced the beautiful island life of Cyprus. Oh, I really want to go. I have a good friend there. Actually, that's where I got the drawing from. It's from my friend in Cyprus. Really want to go and visit him. Then we've just been up to Scotland and to the beautiful Highlands to see this incredible wildcat. So it's two really beautiful, stunning animals, quite charismatic. We got a nice bird and a lovely mammal. Now, friends, for our final animal, for the final conservation species story that I want to share with you from 2021 to look forward to what we can see in 2022. And hopefully in a few months' time, I'll be able to come back to you guys and say, hey, remember the Griffon vulture? They've actually released a couple of new Griffon vultures. Woohoo! They actually had kittens and they're being released. That'd be so exciting. Almost as exciting as having reliable internet. So the final conservation story I'm going to share with you is really close to my heart. I'm trying to be completely unbiased about these. But as many of you know, as alluding to this necklace and a lot of the stuff behind me, I spent a lot of time on the beautiful islands of Hawaii. And so what better place to finish our live stream and our mini tour from our sofas or from our couches or from our chairs, from the comfort of our own home, than to go to the beautiful islands of Hawaii. Am I right? Am I right? The beautiful islands of Hawaii. Now you might be thinking to yourself, okay, all right, we're going to Hawaii. Shelby has a whale tail necklace. You know, she's done work with turtles. Is it Hawaiian monk seals? What animal are we going to talk about tonight with their amazing conservation story? Well, friends, prepare yourself for the ever impressive, as I am really good at transitions here, Hawaiian tree snails. Oh yeah, that's right. When you think of Hawaii, I bet many of you thought of the turtles, thought of the whales, thought of the, you know, amazing food and luau's and all sorts of stuff, which, to be fair, Hawaii has in spades. But what they used to have in spades were these adorable guys, the Hawaiian tree snails. And when I say Hawaii, there's a few different islands of Hawaii. And on each of the different islands, we'll see they had their very own species of tree snail. Not just one, not just like Oahu tree snail. Oh no, there was quite a few. And yes, I did indeed bring up Hawaii because pupia pie. Now, I'm going to address this right now before I continue to get distracted and chuckle at this. They're making fun of me because my favorite dessert in the entire world is chocolate haupia pie. Now, this dessert is a pie, not your British pie of, you know, savory pie. It's a dessert pie, so it's a shortbread crust. There is coconut, kind of, I don't want to say custard, but it's kind of like custardy pudding mousse. Because I'd call it coconut pudding, but I know here in England that means something different. But it's coconut mousse, and then chocolate pudding, if you're an American, kind of chocolate mousse on top with whipped cream, and you get it at Ted's Bakery, and you get it at a few other places, but it's just so delicious. And I'm not really a chocolate person either. Like, I like chocolate, but I'm not like, oh my God, chocolate. But it's how it's mixed with the coconut and whipped cream, and at Ted's, it's like, oh. Anyways, Hawaiian tree snails. This is why I wanted to bring it up, because so many of us think, oh, Hawaii, beautiful tropical animals. But we don't often think about the beautiful animals that are probably right around us that we don't even see, quite literally, because these guys are quite tiny. So I would like to ask you guys, first and foremost, have you been to Hawaii? Let me know in the comments down below. But specifically, I'm going to talk some bits general Hawaii tree snails, but then specifically bring up some interesting facts about the animals you can find on Oahu, on the beautiful island of Oahu. Many of you might know Honolulu. The town Honolulu is on there, the capital of Hawaii, but also the North Shore. And gosh, is it beautiful. Anyways, before I drool. So, how many species of Hawaiian land snail were once described? Let me know in the chat which letter you think. Is it A, over 200 species of Hawaiian land snail, B, over 500 species of Hawaiian land snail, or C, over 750 Hawaiian land snails? Now, when I say Hawaiian land snail, I'm meaning the Hawaiian island chain land snails, not just the big island of Hawaii land snails. Yeah, Crazy LV, isn't that right? Yeah, their shells are super pretty. Let me highlight your comment. Oh, no, but you'd love to go one day. Yeah, for sure, Emma, you totally should go. And yeah, that's a really good point, Crazy LV, is actually a lot of their shells kind of were used in, because they were so numerous, a lot of them were used in like native Hawaiian kind of necklaces and jewelry and things like that. And so yeah, they are absolutely beautiful. And we'll get to that actually in a bit. So we got an A, we got a B. What do you think, Rita? I haven't heard from you in a while. I'm getting nervous. Did you fall asleep? I think you did something really cool over the weekend. I'm going to brag about you, Rita. I know that Rita ran a half marathon over the weekend. Isn't that impressive, guys? Let me know in the chat if you've ever run a half marathon. Would you ever run a half marathon? But yeah, Rita did. I'm really chuffed, Rita. Well done. Cheers. Cheers, Rita. Alice says A. Okay, so we have quite a diverse group of answers in this. Friends, I am pleased to say that once, quite a while ago, there were over 750 species of Hawaiian land snail that were described. And so when I say described, I mean kind of noted down by scientists and kind of recorded. And the reason I specify described is because sadly, as this is a conservation story time with Shelby, you can imagine there's not quite 750 species still around today, which is a bit of a bummer. As our friend Crazy LV says, their shells are super pretty. They are amazing animals. And it's estimated that over 90% of this diversity has been lost, which is devastating because 750 species of land snail on the relatively small land mass is the Hawaiian island chain. That's mind-boggling. Specifically, I wanted to talk about a bit of the Hawaiian land snails that are on the island of Oahu. So the Oahu tree snails. Some of these species, they've been quite studied a bit more intensively than some of the other ones. That might be because the universities, a couple of the big universities are based on the island of Oahu. So maybe it's more accessible or whatnot. But either way, they know of the Oahu tree snail, some of the species can live for up to 10 years. Oh my gosh. You know how much I love lifespans and how crazy I find that. And to think of snail, like these little guys, they're about like 3.5 kind of, well, they range in size, but about 3.5 inches tall, like long, tall. They can live for up to 10 years. Isn't that crazy? They're so cute. And look at this little guy in this shell. Peter? I heard Peter's, Peter, come on. Come on. I see his paw poking through the door. Well, you can come in. You can push the door open. We're talking tree snails, Peter. So as Crazy LV mentioned with like their colors of their shells and stuff, there's a huge amount of diversity within the species, or at least there was, in not just the colors, but the patterns and shapes of the shells. And 41 specifically of those kind of over 750, 41 species are described as being on Oahu alone. Now, within that, this is where it gets really bummerific. And I'm super sorry to have to say this, but it is really important for us going forward in the future to acknowledge kind of these invertebrate animals that not many people talk about in terms of conservation, because they're a lot less glamorous than, say, the wildcat or the Griffon vulture. But of the 41 species that were described as living kind of on Oahu as Oahu tree snails, 22 are believed to be extinct. How sad. And as if that wasn't a bummer enough, a further 18 of those 41 species are near extinction. So, guys, we have to be real about this. We got to get our act together, especially with some of these beautiful invertebrates that are endemic to a part of the world. So when I say endemic, I mean that's where they are like only found in the world. And as their name suggests, Hawaiian tree snail, you might not gonna find it here in the UK. You know, they're only in this area, and that's what makes them so unique and so special. And so we should embrace that about these guys. You know, they can live for up to 10 years. How cool is that? And there's so many other amazing things about these guys. But the reason I wanted to highlight this, and I'm wary of time, and I can talk about this for hours, is because conservation doesn't just involve stuff in the field, and we refer to that as in situ. But also conservation kind of research also has to involve ex situ conservation methods like captive breeding programs, like what we discussed with the Griffon vulture, you know, breeding, well, more specifically with the Scottish wildcat, I should say that's a better example of conservation breeding, you know, breeding animals in captivity, specifically in places like their reserve for release into the wild. And it doesn't just happen with tree snails like these. And another great example of an amazing invertebrate that really does need our help is the Partula snail. In fact, I did a video on that comparing the Partula snail, of all things, to Goomy, the Pokemon. Probably one of my most surprising videos of 2021. Not gonna lie. I was really chuffed with how that one turned out. But anyways, so now let's talk more ex situ methods like captive breeding programs with regards to these invertebrates. Specifically, the studies... Oh, wait. I lied. I wanted to pop in a history question for you guys. Boo, boo, boo. I feel like I should have a theme song for each of these ones. Before we talk the really interesting studies that were done in 2021 to wrap us up for the evening, I want to know from you guys, from the chat, in Hawaiian oral history, what do tree snails do when they climb up and down the trees? Do they A, sing, B, cry, or C, dance? What do you guys think? Out of curiosity. While you guys answer that, I'm going to go see if the Petey Weedy wants to come in. Oh, you're not Peter. Oh, it's not Peter. It's Maui. It's Maui. Peter was outside. Maui, say hi really quick. I don't know if you guys noticed, but Maui has a really cool new line of merchandise called Maui Merchandise. Don't you, Maui? He sabotaged one of the stickers and crossed out Shelby on Safari and put Maui on Safari, huh? Because it's all about you. Maui doesn't make so many appearances on my videos that much anymore, which he's quite grumpy about, obviously, which is why he interrupted the live stream, per the usual. But if you follow on Instagram, it's pretty much Maui's Instagram and Peter's Instagram. So, A, B, O. Oh, no. With regards to the question, we've had some variety, but they actually, in Hawaiian oral history, it is said that the Hawaiian tree snails sing when they climb up and down the trees. Isn't that a lovely idea? Oh, and to think they used to be so numerous. I bet that was easy to imagine, all the different types of beautiful species of not just birds, but other animals and the diversity of plants that are found on the Hawaiian Islands. I bet it was really easy to imagine the tree snails singing. I should mention, yeah, Rita, bummerific indeed. Honest B by G has mentioned a very upsetting, I wanted this to be a positive thing, but we will get to the positives in just a moment, but about snails being a popular skincare ingredient. One of Grace's, like, I don't want to say best videos because it really upset me, but really interesting videos was on animal products in skincare that you probably don't even recognize. Amongst many of the other videos she does, she highlights cool sunscreen, vegan and cruelty-free stuff. But this one video in particular really hit a nerve. I wonder why. She also mentioned whales. Speaking of whale, like the one on my necklace. Things like that with squalene. So, Grace, I don't know if you can, but do pop a link to it in the chat below. I fully give my permission, and then afterwards I'll pop it in the description because I think it is worth a watch, just to be made aware. Very similar to what we're doing now, being made aware of some of the stuff that's happening in the world around us, because if we don't know, we can't do anything about it. Can we, guys? No. So, and I put plumerias on here because they're my favorite flower. That has nothing to do with the question whatsoever. But aren't they pretty? So trying to, oh no! Oh no! Oh no! I'm a failure. Guess y'all stuck with me. So I really want to share with you guys two studies that were done. I'm going to talk about far too quickly for what they deserve the time that they deserve. But with regards to ex situ conservation, so breeding kind of outside kind of their normal environment, so ex situ taking them out, so captive breeding programs. It's really important when we discuss that to think of not just the animal. And when I say that, I mean think of the food, their habitat, obviously addressing their threats, but within kind of a captive breeding program, we want to make sure that we're making the most and making the animals' lives as best as possible and helping prepare them for life in the wild when they are released into the wild, right? And so in conservation stories, I feel we often focus on, yay, these animals were released. But we also need to talk about the nitty-gritty of what goes behind the scenes with preparing these animals for that. And so with the Hawaiian tree snail, as if that wasn't kind of random enough, bringing in an invertebrate into conservation talk, this one study looked at what to feed Hawaiian tree snails, for example. And so they eat quite a weird kind of diet. They eat kind of fungus and vegetation. And so these scientists, because of an unfortunate kind of mortality event that happened with some of these snails in the captive breeding population, it was probably due to bringing in wild kind of vegetation, and something in that wild vegetation wiped out some of these guys. Obviously, that kind of raised awareness to the scientists going, oh, we got to pay attention to this. How can we make it better? And what I really commend is that they actually mentioned kind of that mistake that happened of this unfortunate thing happening. Because sometimes, we gloss over the nitty gritty, but if we don't acknowledge sometimes what went wrong, how can other people be prevented from making that same mistake, right? And so they took matters in their own hands and did a study looking at kind of the fitness, if you will, speaking of Rita's half marathon, the fitness of these tree snails, if they were fed a mixture of kind of wild gathered vegetation versus kind of cultured in the lab kind of fungus. And which one, is it one or the other or a mixture of both, helped the fitness or kind of the egg production and the kind of life of the snails, which one helped them better? And so, with the goal of finding out which one helps them produce a lot of eggs and live for a long time. So it's a win-win situation for everybody and for the captive breeding program. And so they actually found that it was a combination, a mix of both, that helped with the egg production of the tree snails, both a lab cultured fungus and wild vegetation. With regards to kind of the egg productivity. With regards to mortality, there wasn't really a big difference between them. But if we're going to have to pick kind of one, obviously it's good that mortality wasn't impacted in a negative way. But it's great to see a positive of more eggs being produced, because that's the whole point of a captive breeding population, is get a nice sustainable population and hopefully be able to release them successfully. And again, that's a whole other topic, kind of what we've seen with the vultures. What's the point in releasing them if there's not enough vulture restaurants out there for them to feed on? And so with that, that was my other interesting conservation aspect with the Hawaiian tree snails, was tying into that. Okay, we know what they prefer kind of in captivity and gets them laying a lot of eggs, but are we releasing them onto the right sites? And so what better way to kind of look at that than see kind of plant preference of Hawaiian tree snails? And we saw there's a huge amount of diversity. And so this study was really cool because it looked at quite a few different species of Hawaiian tree snail, but then looked at the plants in particular that, you know, they may eat or they might just live on, that they call home, and trying to see, is there a correlation of kind of what plant is used by a lot of species, so then that way they can use that plant both for ex situ conservation, but in situ conservation as well, for when they're released into the wild. And so it's a great kind of more positive thing to end on, because they found it was a more hydrangea plant, a specific Hawaiian hydrangea plant that's a lot of the Hawaiian tree snail species really liked. And so, you know, when push comes to shove, if you're a scientist out in the wild and you're like, ooh, this one has a lot of the Hawaiian hydrangea plants, and this area doesn't have that much. If you look at this study and you see what they have done, you're going to go, oh, I'm going to put them where they prefer this plant, because that's going to give them a better chance of survival. And so bringing it into conservation, it's important for us to not just only consider the animals, but like we saw with the Griffon vulture, the people involved as well. And then now considering kind of that holistic approach of kind of the plants and their environment too. And so conservation biology is a huge topic, but hopefully these 3 different examples highlighted some of the amazing way that scientists and people and organizations are out both in situ, you know, capturing together to help prevent these species from going extinct, like the ever impressive Scottish wildcat or the amazing Griffon vulture that's, you know, going extinct in Cyprus, or in the Hawaiian Islands with the Hawaiian tree snails. So that was a whirlwind journey around the world tonight. I really appreciate you guys joining me for the first live stream of 2022. With the knowledge that we have learned today going forward in conservation, I cannot wait to share with you some proper success stories looking this year. I mean, things are looking really positive for quite a few different species. I'll pop links to the description down below of, say, the Vulture Conservation Foundation, which I encourage you to check them out. And, you know, the Hawaiian tree snails, because not a lot is shared about them. But if you guys had a good time and learned something new, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. It really helps the channel, and show it to people on YouTube. Thank you guys for joining me on the live stream. I love doing the live streams because you guys make me laugh and make me chuckle, and hopefully you guys learned something new. Cheers to the Scottish wildcat and to the amazing animals we talked about tonight. And in this week's video, as you guys have lasted until the end, I'll give you a bit of a spoiler. We're talking hibernation, because why not? It's January, it's cold, it's miserable outside. And I don't know about you, but I'd like to hibernate. Actually, I probably wouldn't. I'd hate that. I'd be bored. I hear cats scratching at the door because it's 9 o'clock and it's their dinner time. So I'm gonna go feed my cats. Have a great evening, guys, and I will see you in Friday's video. Bye.